her grandmother.
Wait.
I'm always finding text messages. You want to come home at 4 and 5 in the morning?
That happened like twice.
So yeah, I was kicking him out.
Use better language in the court. You walked in and saw what?
Booty in the air.
The wedding got called off, and a child's paternity became a courtroom question because of rumors Mr. Hunter could not ignore. Ms. Davies walked in to prove he was the father of her son and to reckon publicly with a relationship that had been fracturing for 5 years.
Davies, you say that after being with Mr. Hunter for 5 years, he's now given into lies and rumors about your past.
Mr. Hunter had pulled back from the engagement after hearing things about her past that made him question whether he could trust her at all. Judge Lauren had both of them in front of her and was not going to let either of them leave without getting to the bottom of it.
Scrapped your wedding plans and is now denying your son Jaden. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Judge Lauren's first question cut straight to the center. If this relationship had been unstable for as long as both of them were acknowledging, why had it taken 5 years and a courtroom appearance to address it directly?
I would say that we were happy when we first got together, but
Ms. Davies did not have a clean answer to that, and the delay itself said some. 5 years of unresolved tension, unanswered questions, and a child born somewhere in the middle of all of it that is not a minor gap. That is a pattern of avoidance that had finally run out of road.
then I started finding text messages, phone calls from other females. So at that point of the relationship, Your Honor, I no longer trusted him.
Ms. Davies did not deny that she had been involved with other men during the relationship. She confirmed it and then immediately pointed across the table Mr. Hunter had not been keeping his own behavior clean either.
Now, once you did that, what happened?
Well, once I did, I briefly had a relationship with the guy.
She described discovering that he had been privately messaging other women, suggesting that whatever she had done had not happened in a vacuum. The courtroom absorbed that dynamic carefully. Neither of them was walking out of this hearing as the innocent party, and the judge was tracking every admission from both sides.
We were sexually together a few times.
The details Ms. Davies disclosed went further than a general acknowledgement of outside involvement. She admitted to being sexually involved with another man without protection during a period when she and Mr. Hunter were together.
Okay, I couldn't say I was 100% sure at the time, but I wanted Devon to be the father.
That specific admission was not something she could walk back, and Judge Lauren was not going to let it pass without weight. The question of the child's paternity was no longer theoretical. It was grounded in a concrete, unprotected encounter with a confirmed second party.
Because he has been there in my life for, at this time, we've been together like 2.5 years.
All right.
What made the situation more complicated was the gap between what Ms. Davies had told Mr. Hunter privately and what she was now saying in open court. She had assured him she was completely certain he was the father. Sitting before the judge, she revised that significantly she had not been certain at all.
I'm at her house, right? She let me stay over her house. I had been drinking, so I wanted to go lay down, right?
But she had wanted him to be the father because of the length and history of their relationship. Wanting something to be true and knowing it to be true are not the same thing, and that distinction had just been stated out loud for the entire courtroom to hear.
I accidentally fall asleep longer than I'm supposed to, so she's thinking I'm gone. She brings another guy and another girl upstairs into the room.
Then came a detail that added another layer entirely. Mr. Hunter had caught Ms. Davies in an act of infidelity involving both a man and a woman, a situation separate from the person she had already admitted to sleeping. This was not the same encounter she had previously disclosed.
And she gets up and walks to the kitchen, and she's in the kitchen for like maybe 10, 15 minutes. She's supposed to came back already. I walk around to the kitchen.
Two separate situations, two separate people, one relationship that was already struggling to hold its shape. The full picture of what Mr. Hunter had been navigating was becoming clearer with every admission, and the courtroom was recalibrating accordingly.
And she's damn near standing in between this guy's legs. Like, you know what I mean? What is that about?
What is this about? Because you say it hurts to hear you.
Judge Lauren made a point of establishing that Mr. Hunter was not being positioned as a saint in this case. His own behavior had contributed to the climate in which all of this occurred, but the weight of the admissions was landing disproportionately on Ms. Davies.
Does not physically interact with Jaden.
Really?
She's a liar.
Yes, Your Honor. We just had a birthday party for Jaden. Devon didn't show up.
Because she was the one confirming every accusation being directed at her without significant pushback. Accountability without deflection is rare in a courtroom, and when it happens, it tends to land harder than anger does. Her visible distress made sense given what she was sitting inside of.
Why didn't you show up to the child's birthday party, Mr. Hunter?
And she gonna start tripping on me and all kind of stuff, because we weren't, like, at that time, she was mad at me anyway.
Mr. Hunter's own conduct came under scrutiny as well, and his explanations did not hold up particularly well under pressure. One specific point involved the child's birthday. He had not been present, and the reasoning he offered was not convincing to anyone in that room.
The house
'Cause she would kick me
90%
out.
of the time.
She would kick me out, like, every week.
Yes, because
Like and subscribe, because the next detail about Mr. Hunter's choices reveals exactly the kind of man he has been throughout all of this. A child does not forget absence, and no explanation offered to a judge changes what a child experiences on a birthday without their father.
I'm always finding text messages. You want to come home at 4 and 5 in the morning?
That happened like twice.
So yeah, I was kicking him out.
The hearing had revealed a relationship built on mutual betrayal, selective honesty, and a child sitting in the middle of it all with no say in any of it. The outside involvement on Ms. Davies' side had occurred more than once, which meant this was not an isolated moment of poor judgment, but a repeated pattern. Both parties had made choices that brought them to this room. The DNA results were the only thing remaining that could speak with any finality about what came next, whether wedding plans were still on the table or whether that chapter was permanently closed.
Mr. Hunter, you are not father.
I told you.
When the son is behind bars, the grandmother steps into the courtroom and Miss Jackson came in swinging. She is contesting the paternity of a little girl named Shia on behalf of her incarcerated son, and she is not here to be polite about it.
Never accept the baby. That's a lie. I stated from day one, I do not believe this is my granddaughter.
Miss Pitkins is on the other side, insisting the child belongs to Miss Jackson's son and pointing out that this denial is a recent development because at one point the family had accepted Shia without question. The contradiction between past acceptance and current rejection was the first crack in the foundation of this hearing.
She first, if I can bring you into my reality.
I want to go in. Tell me what happened.
The origin story of this conflict was already unusual. Miss Pitkins had shown up at Miss Jackson's door one day carrying a 4-month-old baby and announcing that the child belonged to her son. Miss Jackson's reaction was not confusion about the child, it was shock at the woman herself.
How many guys were you sleeping with?
2.
She don't know.
2.
She don't know.
2.
She
when
don't
I met
know.
him, I had a boyfriend.
Because she claims she had never heard Miss Pitkins' name before that moment. A stranger appeared on her doorstep with an infant in a claim, and that first interaction set the tone for everything that followed between these two women.
Me and the boy stopped.
I'm sorry.
When you met her son,
Yes.
you had a boyfriend.
Yes.
Miss Pitkins had been involved with more than one partner during the relevant period, and Miss Jackson knew it. The overlap in relationships was the primary source of her doubt, and on the surface that doubt was not unreasonable.
I'm the judge, and I ask the questions, you answer them.
But the courtroom also had to reckon with a harder question about Miss Pitkins' choices during that time. She had been maintaining multiple connections simultaneously and had apparently continued seeing another man, even after the involvement with Miss Jackson's son. The timeline was complicated and nobody was pretending otherwise.
Okay, talk to me.
Sorry. I'm just frustrated.
Judge Lauren had to intervene more than once to keep the two women from talking over each other and dissolving into open argument. The hearing had a habit of threatening to become a confrontation rather than a legal proceeding every time both parties were given space to speak at the same time.
Not that guy. It's Miss Jackson. When did you change your mind and why?
But underneath the noise was an actual sequence of events worth paying attention to. Miss Jackson's son had at some point accepted that Shia was his child. That acceptance had happened before the denial that brought everyone into this courtroom, and it needed to be explained.
When he pursued me, calling me and like, oh, well, that's my baby, this, that.
The timeline of Miss Pitkins' own certainty was not clean either. When she first discovered she was pregnant, her initial assumption was that the baby belonged to the other man she had been seeing, not Miss Jackson's son. She had been operating on that assumption before eventually arriving at a different conclusion. Whether that shift reflected a genuine reassessment of the timeline or something else was a question the courtroom had not fully answered. Judge Lauren was listening to every version of the story with that inconsistency in mind.
I never took the time and be like, well, she can come over to my house, well, you can come over to my house and spend, you can come over with your daughter. And
That's
I'm just saying, what?
Miss Jackson acknowledged that she had invited Miss Pickens and Shia over to her home on at least one occasion, but her explanation reframed that visit entirely. She did it because her son had accepted the child, not because she had. Her own position had never changed.
Mother connection.
You don't have a grandmother connection.
No.
Meaning when you look at the baby, you don't have that feeling
Exactly.
She did not see the family resemblance Miss Pickens kept pointing to, and she had come to court specifically to have the science confirm what her instincts had been telling her from the beginning. The invitation to her home was not an endorsement. It was accommodation for her son's decision.
This is my grandchild. I have two grandchildren that I love dearly and take very good.
Some of Miss Jackson's reasoning was grounded in observable facts, and some of it veered into territory that was harder to defend. She spoke about not feeling a natural grandmotherly connection to Shia and used that absence of instinct as part of her argument.
Did you lie about a second pregnancy?
Yes, I was
Why?
trying to.
But the courtroom had to consider whether emotional distance from a child whose mother you actively distrust and publicly contest is really evidence of anything biological. Disliking someone and being unrelated to their child are two very different things. Then the fake pregnancy allegation surfaced and the room shifted.
I was trying to hurt. Yes, I did lie. And the only reason how you know I lied because I told your son that I lied. Yes,
we
you
found
did.
out because we
No,
called the
no,
hospital.
Miss Pickens had at some point claimed to be pregnant and later said she had ended the pregnancy, and the allegation being raised was that the pregnancy had never existed at all. Using a false pregnancy as leverage in a relationship is the kind of detail that damages credibility across every other claim a person makes. Miss Jackson's son and his family had been given reason to question whether Miss Pickens operated honestly when the stakes were high for her. Like and subscribe, because the pattern of behavior being described here reframes the entire story of how Shia came into this dispute.
And why you are certain that your grandchild was fathered by Miss Jackson's son. To me, she looked just like her.
The ages involved added another dimension to what was already a layered situation. Miss Pickens was only 19 years old and navigating a level of relational and legal complexity that would challenge someone twice her age.
My son, he did say that this is his child, but a woman should know who's the father of her. And I have told Markel over and over again, we could have had this resolved.
Miss Jackson at 37 was already a grandmother of 3, which meant this entire generational cycle had been moving at a pace that left very little room for the kind of careful decision-making the situation required. Nobody in that courtroom had moved slowly or thoughtfully through any of this, and the consequences were now public record.
If this is my grandchild, I will apologize to her. I said this to her on Facebook, and I will take in that child.
Miss Jackson had stated she was prepared to accept Shia as her granddaughter if the DNA confirmed it, which was the right position to hold regardless of her personal feelings about Miss Pickens. The child had not chosen this situation, and she deserved acknowledgement from the family she biologically belonged to.
I'm trying to understand. You're his current girlfriend,
Yes.
and you have a child with him.
Correct.
You didn't know of Miss Pickens.
The question of whether Miss Pickens was more focused on the relationship with Miss Jackson's son than on her daughter's actual paternity had been raised and left partially unanswered. Like and subscribe, because the DNA results settle the biological question, even if they cannot settle everything else this hearing uncovered.
And you say her concern
about me and Kevin's relationship, then finding if that's Kevin's.
say this entire
Every argument, every contradiction, every moment of shouting, and every reveal about fake pregnancies and overlapping relationships had been circling the same central question: was Shia the biological granddaughter of the woman sitting across from her mother in that courtroom? Two women who clearly could not stand each other had been fighting over a little girl who deserved nothing less than the full truth. The results had been prepared by a certified laboratory, and they were not influenced by instinct, history, or how loud anyone had argued. Judge Lauren opened the envelope, and the answer was finally, definitively here.
Mrs. Jackson, you are not her grandmother.
Mr. Buchanan had been lied to about paternity before, and the damage from those experiences never fully healed. So when his girlfriend's 6-month-old daughter arrived and doubt crept in, he was not starting from a neutral place, he was starting from a place of accumulated pain. The specific detail that sharpened his suspicion this time was not a rumor from a stranger. It was his best friend. Miss Stembridge had been involved with the one person whose betrayal would cut the deepest, and that context colored everything everything that followed in this courtroom.
His beer, and this was actually the day after I was incarcerated in a jail under false pretenses. They had the wrong person, and while we was in the car.
The timeline of the suspected involvement centered on a period when Mr. Buchanan was incarcerated. While he was locked up, Miss Stembridge and his best friend had been spending time together that included drink. Mr. Buchanan's interpretation of that detail was not a stretch. He understood that the combination of proximity, alcohol, and opportunity rarely stays contained.
I get out of jail, all right, and I get back. Who calls me? I get a phone call from my ex.
On top of that, he had received information suggesting the two of them had been seeing each other secretly during his absence. The drinking was the starting point. The rumors were the confirmation his gut had already been looking for.
All right, my ex is who I was dating before her. All right, I get a phone call.
Miss Stembridge arrived in that courtroom making an impression that immediately became its own distraction. Rather than leading with a denial of the allegations, she found herself defending the appropriateness of what she had chosen to wear. The courtroom atmosphere shifted in a direction nobody had quite anticipated.
Use better language in the court. You walked in and saw what?
Booty in the air.
Judge Lauren had to redirect the energy back toward the actual matter at hand because the hearing had briefly become about fashion rather than paternity. Miss Stembridge had barely been given room to address the actual accusations, and that imbalance was noticeable.
Reflection out mirror.
Walked in. This is the door to Eric's room. I walked in.
A witness named Miss M.C. Neal entered the hearing with something that nobody expected: a hand-drawn diagram illustrating what she claimed to have witnessed. She had found Miss Stembridge in bed with Mr. Buchanan's best friend and had apparently felt strongly enough about it to document the scene visually before coming to court.
You have no recollection of her even being in the house.
No, and this was during the daytime. She called.
The diagram itself raised as many questions as it answered. A person who creates a diagram of their ex's girlfriend's alleged infidelity is operating with a level of investment in the outcome that deserves its own scrutiny. Her motivation for being so deeply involved in this situation was sitting right alongside her testimony.
Eric and said, hey, I'm coming over to pick something up. Why would I be bending over to bed like that?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe because...
The hearing kept drifting away from the baby and toward the personal drama surrounding the adults involved. Miss Stembridge and Miss M.C. Neal were clearly carrying tension that predated this courtroom appearance.
Hey, 2 weeks later, all right? That's why I'm denying that little girl, man, because I'm gonna tell you what.
And the case courtroom appearance, and the case was beginning to feel less like a paternity dispute and more like a three-way relationship conflict that happened to include an infant. Judge Lauren kept pulling the focus back to the child, but the gravitational pull of the adult drama kept resisting. Underneath all of it was a 6-month-old girl who had no voice in any of this.
2 weeks later, and she's pregnant. We took 3 of them. They all came back saying there's something wrong in there, all right? Look at that.
Beneath Mr. Buchanan's exterior was something more vulnerable than the surface suggested. He was genuinely hurt, not just by the possibility that this child was not his biologically, but by the specific people involved in the betrayal.
That baby has to have me every night. Sleep. That baby will not go to sleep unless she has me laying in that bed with her.
He is a great father, Your Honor.
Being cheated on is painful under any circumstances. Being cheated on with your closest friend while you are wrongfully locked up and unable to do anything about it is a specific kind of wound. Despite all of that, he had continued showing up for the baby, and the love he had developed for her was real, regardless of what the science would say.
In your eyes as you speak about it.
Yeah, that's my liar.
If she's not your biological daughter.
The tension between Miss Stembridge and Miss M.C. Neal had not resolved itself by the time the hearing moved toward its conclusion. These two women had unfinished business with each other that the courtroom setting had not neutralized. The irony of Miss M.C. Neal claiming to have Mr. Buchanan's interests at heart while being the one who had documented his girlfriend's alleged infidelity with obvious personal investment was not lost on anyone paying attention. Mr. Buchanan was managing the emotional fallout from multiple directions simultaneously and holding it together with visible effort.
You the one lied to him, but yeah, you got his back. That's funny.
It's funny, you the one that never had my back.
That's why you wanted to come to Carolina with me.
Have a seat, Miss
When you were still pregnant.
Every thread of this hearing, the incarceration, the drinking, the best friend, the diagram, the fashion detour, and the two women who could barely be in the same room had been winding around one question that only a DNA result could answer. Mr. Buchanan had loved this child through genuine uncertainty, and that said everything about who he was regardless of biology. The envelope was the last word, and the courtroom had run out of arguments to make before it. Whatever the result revealed, it was about to permanently define the next chapter Hunter for everyone in that room.
Mr. Buchanan, you are her father. Thank you.
3 men, 1 6-week-old baby, and a $475 child support claim that nobody in this courtroom was rushing to accept. Ms. Morton walked in asking the court to identify which of 3 potential fathers owed her back child care support. Mr. Prowell, one of the 3, was already making his position clear before anyone asked with that many candidates in the pool. He argued the odds alone should disqualify him. Judge Lauren was not interested in odds. She was interested in facts, and the hearing was just getting started.
In this situation, I was under the impression that was, me and her pretty much against the world. I've come to find out that she slept around with one guy, then another guy.
Ms. Morton and Mr. Prowell had been in an actual relationship before any of this unraveled. He would not have been sitting in a paternity courtroom questioning his own child if information about her involvement with other men had not reached him first. Once he found out she had been with other people during their relationship, the certainty he had about the baby evaporated immediately. The question was no longer whether he loved her. It was whether the child she was carrying had anything to do with him biologically.
The relationship was going wonderful in the beginning. Now, a couple of months in, I'm finding out there's another woman.
The explanation Ms. Morton offered for how this situation developed followed a pattern the courtroom recognized immediately. She believed Mr. Prowell was being unfaithful, and rather than confronting the situation directly, she responded by becoming involved with someone else.
He asked me, was I involved with Miss Prowell? Now, I told him yes.
Revenge as a relationship strategy had produced exactly the kind of outcome it almost always produces: more damage, more confusion, and in this case, a baby whose paternity nobody could confirm with any confidence. Judge Lauren had seen this particular logic before and was not impressed by it now.
We had a little thing going on at the time. It wasn't very, very serious. Well, he was like, well...
Mr. Gaddes was the man she had become involved with as part of that response, and his presence in this case carried its own complications. He disputed any connection to the child and revealed something that made the courtroom pause. He had not even known she was pregnant.
Didn't know she was in a relationship. She lied to me, obviously. I don't think I'm the father.
Their involvement had happened in the past, and from his perspective, it had concluded long before any pregnancy entered the picture. He was not approaching this hearing as a man bracing for a result. He was approaching it as a man who genuinely did not believe this situation had anything to do with him.
Because we only messed around a few times, and I didn't hear from her for months.
Ms. Morton's account of the situation with Mr. Gaddes included the detail that alcohol had been a factor in that particular encounter. She framed it as something that happened rather than something she deliberately chose. The third man in the case, Mr. Lowry, received a very different description. Her involvement with him had been entirely intentional and was motivated by spite rather than circumstance. Judge Lauren acknowledged the distinction but made the point plainly: the motivation behind a choice does not change its consequences, and 3 wrongs compounding each other still only produce more damage.
I do want to say for the record, I'm very remorseful for what I did because that was totally out of spite. That's what it was.
The ages of the people involved added context that reframed the entire hearing. These were teenagers navigating decisions that were producing adult-level consequences at a pace they were clearly not equipped to manage. Ms. Morton had expressed that she did not want Mr. Lowry to be the father of preference that Judge Lauren addressed without softening the response. Wanting a specific outcome and having earned the right to that outcome are not the same thing. The moment the choice was made, the preference became irrelevant.
If you knew we had sex more than once, why wasn't I hit up for this? Like, why weren't I called?
Can I say something, Your Honor?
I'm talking now.
The preference became irrelevant. All 3 men Ms. Morton had been involved with were co-workers, and the timeline of the involvements compressed into a very short window. She sat before the court walking through that calendar with a matter-of-fact delivery that struck everyone watching as disconnected from the gravity of what she was describing.
Sometime on the 17th, and I slept with him again on the 28th.
3 separate involvements with people from the same workplace within roughly the same period had produced a baby and a courtroom appearance before that baby was even 2 months old. Judge Lauren had questions, and she was not asking them gently.
Okay, move on.
I'm on the red. When I slept with Mr. Gaddes at a party,
Mr. Morton had not signed the birth certificate, which was a detail that distinguished his position from the others in at least one concrete way. What he had done was stay present during the delivery and hold her hand through it. That gesture was noted by the court as evidence that his feelings toward her were genuine even within the complicated circumstances surrounding the child's paternity. But presence at a birth and biological fatherhood are two separate things, and the court was there to determine the latter, not celebrate the former.
During the process of me giving birth, however, after me giving birth and they moved me to my stable room.
The expectation, Ms. Morton, appeared to hold that all three men should be actively pursuing involvement with a child whose paternity had never been established did not land well in that courtroom. Her neighbor had apparently reinforced that expectation before the hearing, and Judge Lauren made clear that the logic did not hold. A man who does not know whether a child is his is not obligated to act as though the answer is already confirmed. The baby was 6 weeks old, and from this point forward, whoever the science identified would have a clear and unavoidable responsibility to step into.
And why didn't you call him?
How can we help if we don't hear about the kid? That's my kid. You should have to call me to let me know.
This is what
Judge Lauren's patience reached a visible limit at a certain point in the hearing, and the outburst that followed was not something Ms. Morton had anticipated. Like and subscribe, because the judge's words in that moment were the kind that stay with you long after the episode ends. The hearing had revealed a teenager making decisions that were generating consequences she had not fully thought through.
Percentage that is your child is the percentage that it isn't your child. Regardless, no one is this child.
Surrounded by men who were equally unprepared for the situation they had each contributed to creating. The only innocent person in the entire case was 6 weeks old and sleeping somewhere, unaware that his entire future was being decided in a courtroom.
But your point is you don't feel like any of the men truly stepped up.
Ethan had arrived into a situation not of his making, and the adults responsible for that situation were still working out the basics of accountability in front of a judge. Ms. Morton had come seeking financial support and left having exposed far more about the circumstances surrounding her son's conception than she had probably intended to share publicly. The three men named in this case had each been pulled into the orbit of the same set of choices and were now waiting for science to sort out who among them would be stepping up permanently. The results were ready and the room fell silent.
I'm not saying they got it all the way right. All of you silly, because you're teenagers, you're young, you have no business even having babies.
Whoever walked out of that courtroom as Ethan's confirmed biological father was walking into an obligation that would last the next 18 years minimum. The hearing had not been comfortable for anyone involved, and Judge Lauren had made sure every person present understood exactly why. A 6-week-old child does not care about the timeline of the choices that preceded his arrival. He only knows whether someone shows up. The DNA results were about to determine who that someone was required to be going forward, and nothing said in that courtroom could change what the science was about to reveal.
The father is Mr. Morton.
Most paternity cases bring a mother and a potential father into conflict. This one walked in differently. Miss Horton and the man she had always called her father arrived in that courtroom together, united in their belief that the truth about her biological origins had been kept from both of them.
Ms. Horton,
yes,
you and the man you have always believed is your dad have dragged your mother to court.
Ms. Conrad, Miss Horton's mother, was the one being challenged today. The fact that both the daughter and the man who raised her doubted the official story made this hearing unlike most Judge Lauren had seen.
Because you say she was never faithful. So neither of you is your biological father. Not your biological father, and yet you're hoping that he is.
I'm praying, yes.
But the question of biological paternity had never fully left him, and it had followed him into this courtroom after decades of sitting unresolved. The man who showed up every day was now asking whether any of it had been built on a foundation that was never his to stand on.
I'm not Papa here all the
Mr. Horton's doubt had a specific source. He said that during the period when he and Ms. Conrad were intimate, she had also been involved with multiple other men. He was not speculating about possibilities, he was describing a situation he had direct awareness of at the time.
That was wrong.
I just got that. Okay.
Mr. Horton was not convinced and made his skepticism clear with language that crossed a line in the courtroom. Judge Lauren addressed that directly because the hearing was not going to become a space for insults, regardless of what had happened between these adults decades ago.
We want to be respectful in the courtroom.
Because it's not true.
It is so true.
I'm not like that.
Ms. Horton.
My mom didn't feel comfortable going, but I can understand my mom because she don't want any trouble.
Judge Lauren spoke to that directly and without softening the observation. A grown woman should not have to stand in front of a mirror at 26 years old, genuinely uncertain about whether the man she grew up calling her father shares her DNA. That kind of uncertain belongs in the first months of a child's life, not biological father. The courtroom absorbed that claim carefully. It was specific, it was visual, and it gave the doubt a concrete shape it had not had before. Ms. Conrad responded with a counterclaim. She said a DNA test had already been conducted, and the result, the credibility contest between those two positions, had no clean resolution in that moment. One of them was telling the truth about the test, and one of them was not, and only one piece of evidence in that room was immune to argument.
Basically, Mr. Horton believes that this man, this male man, your daughter's father. You're saying that's not true?
Yes.
Miss Horton's blue eyes had reportedly been part of what first raised questions about her paternity. Physical traits that did not seem to trace back to Mr. Horton had fueled his private doubt for years, even as he continued showing up as her father. Like and subscribe because the detail about those physical features connects directly to what the DNA results are about to confirm or overturn. The evidence Mr. Horton brought into that courtroom was not random. It was the accumulation of a lifetime of quiet observation that he had. The tears Miss Horton had been holding since the hearing began told the story. Her composed words were